Okay, and welcome back to Satoshi Chain. My name is Adam, and I'm just going to be, I guess this would be considered a shitpost. I'm just going over some stuff on LinkedIn, and I'm having such a hard time. And my head is exploding in a way. People are not aware of how dumb they're sounding about crypto and Bitcoin in general. I'll preface it by saying again, I could be wrong. I'm wearing a Bitcoin shirt right now. I've definitely developed more conviction over the years, 8 years since I've been looking into it and learning. And I've done most of my learning over the past 2 years, to be honest. But here we go once again, where people are posting things and they're saying things, and you can tell that they're in the public square saying things, but they haven't done their research. And one of them is actually a professor who says that he teaches a course on blockchains. So I'm super interested in his reply as well. But let's go over the first one here. So we have Matthias here on LinkedIn. Bitcoin has broken these three promises: promise to be decentralized, promise to be cheap, and promised freedom from censorship. I don't understand most of these as being issues. I do think that the decentralized part, specifically with the nodes, he's talking about the wallets. I would say again, the Pareto principle would probably follow with the distribution of wealth in any system, including Bitcoin, which would be that 20% of the wallets would have about 80% of the wealth, 20% of the roads have about 80% of the traffic. So if Bitcoin could change that relationship and make it more distributed, that would be nice. But I don't think it's not in the white paper. This was never discussed. This was never a promise of Bitcoin that it would do this. And in fact, you'd be fighting kind of a law of human nature, and maybe even a law of nature itself, because we find the Pareto principle distribution in many places in the natural world. So again, would be beautiful if it fought that, but I don't think it is. Centralization of the nodes, though, which he doesn't actually talk about, I think that's a big problem, where I think about 50% of the network now is owned by two node operators or node farms, or mining farms. That could be a big problem for crypto. And until I learn more, probably look into it more, but until I learn more, like, that is a major issue for basically the validity and trust in the network, the validity of the network and the trust in it. Promise to be cheap. I don't know if it ever promised to be cheap. And in fact, what I wrote here is, let's just see a little more comments over here. And I replied to a comment, but yeah, did Bitcoin promise to be cheap? So I looked over the white paper again because I read through it, but I only read through it after being in crypto for about 4 or 5 years. So again, like, a lot of people are in the space or are sitting next to the space or antithetical to the space, and they haven't done no research, including a 9-page paper. And again, I didn't read through the maths of the paper because I'm not at that level of mathematical ability. So I'm just being honest here. Did Bitcoin promise to be cheap? I mean, I don't think it ever explicitly says it's going to be a low fee cost thing. And again, this is another point that I make in another comment, but it's like the creator who understood cryptography. I guess I'll just keep saying this over and over again, because this is critical thinking 101. This is just understanding the facts of the matter and understanding what's being said relative to the facts of the matter. The creator of Bitcoin, or the creators, understood cryptography, computer science, and something about the history of money and the value of gold and fiat currencies and the debasement of currencies and basically trust and centralized banking. They understood all of these concepts. They likely understood the throughput. Of the Visa network and the MasterCard network. And so you're telling me someone or some group of people who are intelligent enough to understand all these things didn't understand that the 7 transactions per second would not be competitive in a world where the MasterCard and Visa network do tens of thousands of transactions per second. That was going to replace daily transactions. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And if you think about it from what's being proposed here in terms of the second claim, which is that the promise to be cheap, I think $10 to $100 is quite cheap to use a permissionless network, to use infrastructure that is a huge distributed network that is ultra secure with ultra fast verification, where I can send money permissionlessly at any denomination. That seems to be pretty cheap to me, actually. Now, is it cheap in terms of MasterCard? I tap my phone, I pay for a $2 coffee instantaneously, and there's no fee to me. There's a fee. Oh, let me just change this. Hey Google, office daytime. Sorry about that. There's obviously there's a fee to the network, to the storefront that I'm at. They pay those fees, and those fees are billions of dollars a year in the United States. It's costly. But do I see those fees? No. And furthermore, banking usually now they now have no fee banking, so that's low cost. This is very costly relative to that. But you flip it around and you go, but do I have to hand over a bunch of information about myself to everyone I'm buying from? Yes. A MasterCard has that information. Can I send money at any denomination? No. In Canada, you got e-transfer limits of $3,000. That's as much as you can send to a random person. With Bitcoin, $300 million. It could be. And we're thinking like peasants here. You got to understand too. I think some people will be like, Adam, Adam, what the fuck are you talking about? Who's sending 300 million? Like, I'm just trying to buy a coffee. It's like, you don't understand. Like, this network is not for buying coffee. The problems that it's addressing right now are not for you. You might feel sad about that. You might say, hey, I thought Bitcoin was made for me to go buy my thing off of Amazon. No, it's not. That was never the intention, was for you to buy coffee with. It's a 7 transaction per second throughput. It was never intended for 6 billion, 8 billion people on the planet to be buying coffees with it. It's so stupid. Like, if you did research in it though, this is what I'm thinking about critical thinking. If you did research in it and thought about it, you'd understand, maybe there's other problems with Bitcoin and you could talk about them. But people around the world not being able to buy coffee with it is not a problem, because it was never proposed. It's not an issue. You have to think about being a billionaire, being an oligarch, being a Russian oligarch when they got their money cut off by the SWIFT network. They had their wealth that they had in different countries that they trusted more, because in Vladimir Putin's Russia, they don't know how much they actually own certain things. The military can always knock on their door and go, hey, you're out, and maybe also you're dead, you're fucking dead. So they're putting their money, just like Chinese millionaires and billionaires, they're putting their money in different places in the world. Real estate over here, some stocks over here, we'll get my son's citizenship over here. This is the game that they're playing. They're distributing their money, they're protecting their wealth. It's called the wealth protection game. Well, maybe if someone proposed to you that you could hold economic value worth, $10 million on your own person, and no one needs to know about it, you could actually have 24 words as your passphrase memorized, and then you don't even need a physical representation of it. Maybe that's a good solution. Again, I'm not a millionaire or billionaire. I wouldn't fucking know. But thinking about it, I would imagine that that's an all right solution. Could be. Could be. And would these people be willing to pay? Would they be? I mean, there's no membership cost for Bitcoin, but would they be willing to pay a membership cost of $10,000 a year for the privilege of using that network? Yeah, I think so. Now, Adam, Bitcoin's not that network because it's volatile. Okay, I know, I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying it's definitively that network. I'm just asking us to do a thought experiment. Critical thinking 101 again. Let's just do a thought experiment. If you had the problems of a billionaire or a multimillionaire, like the ones I described, where you have your wealth, if you store it in fiat currencies, it's bleeding at approximately, depending on where you are on the planet, anywhere from 7 to 50% per year. You're losing your purchasing power. So you go out and you buy stuff with it. You go out and you secure the bleeding of your assets by buying things with it. But now all the things that you've purchased are physical commodities that you need to track, and they're all owned. Even if you own a gold ETF, so you're not owning gold physically, but that is through an exchange. That's through a nation state. The gold physically exists somewhere, and you have to trust many counterparties in that chain, whether it's the people who are holding and securing the gold, or the people who are insuring the gold in case that thing gets attacked and stolen, or the brokerage that you've bought your issuance, your abstraction of the gold through an ETF. You have to trust all these people. That's not bad. Maybe you put 10% of your wealth into gold ETFs. So maybe for some part of your wealth, and if you're a billionaire, for some part of your wealth, you want it to be closer to home for whatever reason. And you want it to be liquid. You want to be able to move it. You want to be able to divide it up into a million different pieces, your $10 million, and you want to split it up into different places and send it, and you don't want to tell anyone you're doing this. You don't need permission to do this. You want to get on a plane and land somewhere else and be able to do it. If you'd like to do that, let me just get the focus back here. If you'd like to do that, can you tell me what are your options other than Bitcoin at this time? What are your options? You don't have any. There are no options. There is no solution to these problems, but we're all fucking peasants, so we don't understand the problems. Anyways, I mean, so then this guy writes like, this story about Bitcoin, and it's like, hey, it's all just valuation and speculation. And if one monkey creature buys it for 10,000 and he talks to the other monkey creature and they buy it for 10,000, then they decide to sell it back and forth to each other through like basically wash trading, like how the art market works. You could just get the price to go up indefinitely. And I asked him too, like, how much time have you spent learning about how most fiat money, or rather debt money, is created? Why gold has been valued for millennia, and what defines hard money? Like, I think other people mention this too. Like, you could say the same thing about gold, but you would be a fucking idiot if you said that, because it would show that you know nothing about gold. If you said, oh, gold is just a metal coin, everyone's dumb for valuing gold because it's just a metal coin that's found in the ground. And, gold has value just because we perceive it as having value, so that one of us can get the gold and we can trick another one into liking the gold, and then they'll like it, and then the value will go up as we trade. First I'm trading running shoes for the gold, and then I'm trading a house, and and then I'm trading 5 cars and the house for. This is like the child's understand. Like, it just shows that you've done no research. You've done no research into any of these topics. And I don't necessarily blame you. Again, I didn't do fundamental research into these topics until about 2 years ago, even though I was interested in crypto. I understood some of the promises, but I didn't understand how bankrupt the fiat currency system that we're in was and is. And I didn't understand the relationship between fiat currencies and gold and the history of it. Whether it's Roosevelt confiscating gold from people, I think it was 1933 during the Great Depression, or whether it's the Bretton Woods Agreement after World War II, where the US decided as a sole superpower to become the number one issuer of global reserve currencies and demanded gold and said, we will back gold for US dollars. And then going to, obviously, Nixon getting off the gold standard in, I believe, 1971, temporarily because of the speculators. But really, it's because they had more IOUs for the gold, i.e. money, like fiat money, US dollars, than there was actually gold. And people were starting to catch on to this. Once we understand that it's all a system of trust, basically, and then the value of Bitcoin will be more apparent. But if you haven't done that work, it's just like, oh, monkey creature likes gold, and other monkey creature likes gold. Again, I think that he wouldn't say this about gold. But then, what would be his reasoning for explaining the value of gold over millennia, thousands and thousands of years, dating back through ancient times? He wouldn't have. Like, it would. I'm assuming it would be the same thing. As soon as you understand why gold was valued for thousands of years, because it was a superior form of money. It has a stock to flow that's desirable. That means that there's enough of it that you could create liquidity for a growing economy, but you can't find it so easily that it would undermine the current purchasing power of the gold that exists. It's very desirable. You can't tarnish it. You can melt it down and make it divisible into many different units. This is what gold has solved. It solved this issue, and the issue was moving away from bartering and commodities towards a standardized unit of abstraction of economic energy, towards one that is, again, liquid, is divisible, is transportable, and it can't be tarnished, gold. But now we're moving beyond that. You can't send gold through a USB cable, through Wi-Fi. That's a huge limitation. And Lynn Alden in her book Broken Money describes this. One of the main advantages of the current fiat system over gold is because the final settlement can't be done with gold unless you actually move the gold. It's very painful and slow, and it's very expensive. But then when you avoid final settlement, when you just start dealing with abstractions of values, and you start sending IOUs back and forth to each other, and you just keep a ledger of that, a tabulation of that, then you can move that. You can move that at the speed of light, because you can just say, hey, okay, I purchased 10 million of these from you. I have an IOU. I will owe you when we settle. You get to a problem. The problem is that there has to be a lot of trust baked into the system, because there's different actors who are receiving these messages, managing their individual ledgers, trying to line them up. And if they start lying to you, or they start inflating or devaluing their currency, or a number of other things that they can do within the system of money that is their sovereign state and their economy, or they're dealing with another sovereign state who has power over them, there's a lot of assumptions that might be eroded. There's a lot of trust that might go by the wayside. And this, by the way, if you're not understanding what I'm saying, this perfectly explains why you can't buy a can of Coke for $1 anymore at the convenience store. When I was growing up, I could. Just like everyone else, I always grew up with inflation in the background, right? The candy bar used to be, I don't know, it used to be 80 cents. Okay, now it's $2.50 or something. I don't know what it is, but I know a can of Coke, sometimes you can go to Walmart, they had it for 50 cents, right? In like the 90s. And then usually it was kind of $1, and a bottle was usually $1.50. But has Coke changed? Has it become fundamentally better? No, but now it's, and I remember the 2 liters used to be $2, and now they're more like $3. That's still the discount one. But you get the bottle, 250 milliliters or whatever. Now it's like $3. It's like the same as going to a big box store and getting the 2-liter one, right? For like $3. Sometimes they're 4. But what's happened? Housing prices, and this is the one that everyone complains about, housing prices. The cost of transportation. I live in Toronto, the TTC has gotten more expensive, right? What are all of these things? What are all of these issues? What's causing all these changes? But now we understand that the currency itself is being worth less. We know the government targets 2% inflation per year. That assumes that if the economy keeps growing, they need more units of account to help the liquidity move inside that economy, right? If the economy is using up 100% of all the money at time t, but the economy is growing, it'll have need not just for the 100%, but for 102% or 105% of that, of the whole money that's in the system. So as the economy keeps growing, you increase the amount of money in the system to help the system still have relatively the same amount of money per economic activity. But if you don't do that appropriately and you just put in more money, then it warrants economic activity. You see inflation. The equilibrium is lost, and that's what we're seeing. And we're not seeing 2% inflation on housing, right? We're not seeing year-over-year inflation. The S&P 500 is not having year-over-year increases of 2%. It's getting 6, 8. More recently, because there's been so much inflation, because of the pandemic, over 10%. For the past few years. I know it was down, but now it's like, this year is like 26%. The companies haven't gotten better. The Coca-Cola hasn't gotten better. You're not getting more Coca-Cola when you're buying the bottle. It's the same bottle. It's the same amount. If anything, the supply chains have probably become even better and cheaper for them, although energy costs are all over the place. But their material manufacturing science is getting cheaper. Their economies of scale is getting cheaper, but the product is getting more expensive. Why? Because the currency is being devalued. If you don't understand this, there's no point in even talking. But that's why I'm asking people, like, have you done any research? Like, have you actually looked into this? And there's a bunch of other people who are asking here for clarification, because they're seeing stupidity. But let me go down to here then. So this is Herman Sai, I believe. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Bitcoin is not a currency. I agree. It is not a share price. Yep, 100%. It is not linked to physical assets. Okay, you know what? I don't even. Okay, sure. It's not a commodity. Actually, legally speaking, he's wrong. At least the United States, and I think in Canada, they both said that. I think both Bitcoin and ETH have been by the SEC in the United States, as well as the commodity not commodity branch of the U.S. government, like multiple agencies in the United States, as well as different district courts, state courts, have all agreed that Bitcoin is a commodity. So I don't know why he's saying it's not a commodity. I guess he means like it's not oil, but sure, let's just go with it. It's not a fixed deposit. That's right. Like gold and diamonds, it does not pay interest, but coupons or dividends. But I mean, does gold pay dividends, or are you talking about a security based off of gold that pays dividends? Because in that case, it might very well be the case that the ETFs could do that. I think for now, the U.S. severely restricted with in-kind contributions or something, or payouts. I'd have to look into that again, but they restricted your ability to earn money off of your like the Bitcoin ETFs. Sorry, I'd have to look into that one again, but I'm sure you could get. I think that there will be financialization around Bitcoin. We're already seeing that with the ETFs, and I think that you are going to be able to earn money on your Bitcoin and to loan it out in an insured way. I don't think it's a crypto native way of doing it. I don't think it's recommended that you loan out your Bitcoin, but I think these products will be created, and I'm sure there'll be a crash around them at some point. In fact, it's not backed by anything other than the likelihood of finding another buyer. I don't. Sure, let's just roll with that. It is a measurement of settlement, yep, but also final settlement. More like a stock exchange index. Sure. It isn't an investment into something that you think that others think will be valuable. I don't think it's just that, though. I do think it's beyond that. I don't think it's just, I think other people will find this valuable. But the proposition is, I think other people will find this valuable because everything else in their life is going to shit. Energy is getting more expensive. The majority of people do not own stocks. The majority of stock ownership in the United States and in Canada is owned by about the top 10% of total wealthy individuals. And if you were to abstract it up to the 0.1%, you would find that there would be a large coalescing of the amount of stock ownership just among those. 0. Not even talking about 1%, 0.1% would own by far a disproportionate amount of stocks, real estate, art, valuable art. People don't have access to these instruments, but they have access to Bitcoin. I don't think it's just some other monkey creature over here thinks it's valuable, and I think it's valuable because that other monkey creature thinks it's valuable. This is the same argument I just attacked to the other guy. I don't think it's that. I think it's solving a problem of trust. I think it's solving a problem of sovereign state control of the public ledger of fiat currencies, printing of fiat currencies and devaluing money. I think it solves a problem of transportation of final settlement. Gold never had that. You couldn't immediately finally settle gold. You could supply each other IOU slips to move around the gold around the world, and you do that by horseback and naval power at one point, and now you do it by telecommunications. But you're not doing final settlement. You're not moving until you move the gold from here to here. I actually don't have the gold. I have a slip that tells me that I own the gold. I have a slip that tells me that I own this or that asset. I don't have the actual asset. And again, that's fine for most cases. But there might be some ways where you say, you know what, I don't want to trust these institutions. I don't want to trust the government. I don't want to trust these various actors that are in between me and the economic value that I have. I'd rather hold it myself. And then on top of that, if the median that I'm holding it on, when you zoom out, this is a logarithmic graph. When you zoom out, if it's going up at some sort of logarithmic rate, it's going up. Again, there's crashes, there days, but even in the face of multiple 80% crashes, it's going up at an astounding rate. Yeah, I'd want to hold my money there. Fuck, I don't need the this is the thinking though, right? Like, just other monkey creatures. No, it's not just other monkey creatures find it valuable. We have 15 years of data coming in right now, and it's saying for a nominal fee, you can take your economic energy that you spent working in the fields, working in the rice paddies, working as a farmer, delivering packages, delivering food at Uber Eats. You can take that economic energy for the cost of basically nothing, and you can put it somewhere. You can put it somewhere, and you don't need to open up an account on Questrade, and you don't need to go to your bank, who's just going to basically take that money and do fractional reserve banking on it. So there's actually you don't have to trust anyone. You can take it and you can put it somewhere. And you can put it in a place that, as for now, I can't guarantee this, has vastly outperformed every other asset on the planet. You could put it there. Is this just stupid monkey creatures saying, "Oh, like I find value, you find value"? It's not that. It's more. It's bringing to the masses the ability to essentially be banked and to save and protect their economic value against the deflation of currencies without the need to go through lawyers to own property in the United States or a desirable place. Not everyone has access to do that. And also to do it in an asset right now that is vastly outperforming every single asset that's ever existed on planet Earth. Can I guarantee you that it will last like that forever? I cannot. Is there only 15 years of data? There is. Is 15 years of data equal to 100 years of data or gold's millennia's worth of? No, it's simply not. But that's called risk reward. That's called risk reward. In that sense, it's closer to a payment in a religion, I don't know about that, arts, collectibles, single malt whiskey, or influencers than it is traditional investment. Okay, that's fine. Like I'm fine with saying it's not like traditional investments. And you know what? I think we're better off in the crypto world as saying it's not like a traditional investment because it's moving like an alien asset. In other words, if you said, "Oh, this is just like stocks," no, it's not. It's not. It hasn't been. For better and for worse, it has not been like that. And intangibles like goodwill can last for a long time. Like inflated property prices, right? But again, see, this is the thing. Are the property prices inflated? This is one of the main things we have to ask is, are the property prices inflated fully because of speculation, immigration, supply, demand? Or to some extent, are the property prices inflated because the currency is literally devaluing? The currency, the American dollar, the Canadian dollar, the Turkish lira, I think that's what they have there. It's the yuan, the yen, the won, the Australian dollar. Are these currencies? I'm just listing them out now. I'm trying to show how worldly I am. But are these currencies actually deflating? I think they are. I think they are. I think the fact that the Coca-Cola price has gone up is not just a result of corporate greed. It's due to inflation. I think my dollar is worth less than it was before. And I think part of the reason why the houses have gone so up is not just because there's a frenzy and not just because there's stupid monkey creatures who are battling with each other over ridiculous prices. I think it's gone up because everyone's seeing that their total economic store of value is deflating over time. And it's going somewhere, but it sure as fuck is not going to you. It's going to the people who are positioning themselves in the economy to take full advantage of that migration of wealth. And they have inroads with politicians in the political sector. They have inroads with the banking sector. That's where the money's going. It's not because it's not even money we're talking about at this point. It's economic energy. It's economic potential. Demand creates demand and scarcity creates price. Price deviates from utility in the face of perception, scarcity, beliefs, and branding. Okay, so this is where, again, Bitcoin's just a bunch of activist stuff. All it takes for something to have value is for sufficient people to believe that it does. Okay. This is the greater fool theory again, but I'm asking everyone, like, does this explain why we've gone from literally worth nothing to worth $10,000 and what might be $1 million? All we're doing is we're creating this stupid brand and we're finding more and more stupid people. And by the way, we're not just finding more and more stupid people who have equal levels of wealth, because it was all retail at first. It wasn't necessarily the ultra wealthy. But as time is going on, the only reason why the system is growing to $10,000, $100,000 per Bitcoin, and maybe $1 million for Bitcoin, 500,000, I'm gonna predict for him in the next 10 years. It's not just that we're getting smart money. We're getting people with lots of money. We're getting people who are interested in protecting their wealth, who have bought real estate, who have bought gold, who are invested, who are diversified. If we're getting up to 100,000 US dollars, which we have, and if we pass that, and if we eventually get up to $1 million, it will be because we have intelligent, big funds of money now stepping into the system. And I ask, is this because the greater fool, there's just more and more stupid people? And hey, we're finding more and more rich, stupid people. Imagine that. All these rich people, all these people with influence all over the place, with advisors left, right, and center. They're coming in now because we're just a greater fool. I guess we're finding a greater and greater, more wealthier fool. And unfortunately, it is just as ephemeral as goodwill. It is valuable until the day it is not. Okay, but and again, I just want to mention as well, like this is the unscientific part of what I'm saying, and I've talked about this in other videos. The data so far, again, we only have N15. We can only have 15 years of data, but the data so far has been flying in the face of everyone who said this. And if you go to the Bitcoin obituary, many people have said similar things to what he is saying now. It has no value. I don't understand it. It's only valuable because other people find value in it. And it's a greater fool's theory. All we're finding is greater and greater fools. Well, when will it stop? Tell me. Like, let's get a falsifiable proposition in here. And that's what I've asked for. Just load up my comments here. I said, your statement doesn't make falsifiable claims about the future of Bitcoin. I would like for you to make one. For example, given that Bitcoin is ephemeral and based on mere sentiment, I expect Bitcoin to be worth $0 in 10 years. Or, given that Bitcoin is simply a brand fueled by speculation, it can be replaced by another hot token. I expect Bitcoin to be replaced by another coin with similar functionality within X years. So again, he can manipulate those propositions as much as he'd like, but I'd like to understand, based off of what he is saying here, what are the approximate timeframes that he has, just approximations or approximately valuations of Bitcoin. Then I said, as a gesture of goodwill, I'll go first. The Bitcoin network activity will continue to grow over the next 10 years as opposed to decline, which is a proposition, because again, if we're in basically ephemeral land here where anything can happen and someone can create a new token tomorrow, if we're in that world, which I think is what he's suggesting, there's no underlying value to this thing, then it very much could be the case that the network declines. I haven't even said how much it will decline by, but let's just say a notable decline in network activity. I'm not going to count a small deviation before going up again. But if we start going, we start losing 20% network activity, 20% like year over year, and we get down to where we were in 2015, that's going to be disastrous for the whole idea that Bitcoin is growing and it's finding use, right? So again, like I would be falsified in what I'm proposing here, that it does have value and that it will continue to grow. But I've added another proposition, another one. Within the next 10 years, Bitcoin will be worth 50,000 US dollars. A lot of people are predicting 2030, by the start of next cycle, we're going to get to $1 million. I'm not that zealous, but I am saying that based on what I'm seeing right now, we could get up to 200,000 this cycle or not. I can't predict the fucking future. Give me a break. But at some point within the next 10 years, probably, I think that's the most comfortable time period I would be giving with a $5,000 500K, because I think that would include part of the next cycle after the next one. So sometime between the end of this cycle, the next cycle, and the one after that, so the two cycles, if we continue following this cycle theory, which we might not, again, I can't predict the future, but within the next 10 years, I think we're going to get to 500,000, $500,000 USD Bitcoin. And I believe a large part of the reason will be from devaluation of currency, specifically devaluation of currency to pay off debt. We all know there's a debt bomb that's looming over all these sovereign states. They don't know how they're going to pay for pensions. They don't have the money. They don't have the purchasing power. The debt keeps growing. In the US, it's growing to $100 trillion. $1 trillion every 100 days, not 100 trillion. I'm sure they'll fucking get there soon, but it's not growing by 100 trillion yet. They have to keep having political fights where they have to raise the debt ceiling. We know these things are happening. As long as the Bitcoin network itself doesn't fail, fundamentally a 51% attack, I'm fairly comfortable saying right now that in 10 years, we're going to have a $500,000 USD Bitcoin. And it's not going to be as impressive as it would have been 5 years ago, because $1 million is just not going to be that much fucking money. It already isn't right now. We already know this. There, I've made 2 predictions about Bitcoin. And to be sure, I believe these predictions will become true because A, Bitcoin provides real utility by solving millennia-old problems regarding the trust, verification, transportation, storage, and scarcity of money. And B, the data from the past 15 years, that is the growth of the network, the increase in value, adoption by nation states, legitimization of the space, the devaluation of fiat currencies, and the network not being hacked while holding over $2 trillion US on the network. corroborate my observations, but I eagerly await your reply. So I'm asking him, this guy, and there's so many, again, I want to say it this way, there's so many people who are so fucking concerned with being right, they're not looking at the facts. It's like they're so worried about, they're so concerned about looking at this the right way, the way that the media talks about it. They're not bringing to bear any of the past 15 years. They're just saying, look, I've been told it has no value. I've looked into it. I don't know if they have. I've looked into it. I don't really understand the nature of money. I don't know the history of gold and why it was ever valuable, but I've looked into it and I've listened to Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, and I've listened to Jamie Dimon and these other people and these talking heads, and they've said it's bullshit. And I'm saying I don't understand it, so it's bullshit. This is what these people are doing. This guy is apparently a professor of digital strategy. Look, people are going to do amazingly well in this world without Bitcoin. They're going to start companies. He's going to do amazingly well. But just because you're an expert in one field, it doesn't fucking carry over. It doesn't mean that you're an expert in this thing. I've had people tell me, oh, I've talked to a PhD and they don't find any value. No, but I asked them, how long have they spent understanding basically the philosophy of money, understanding fundamental principles and how money and ownership and trust are all connected? How much time have they spent on that? And that's not even understanding Bitcoin. That's just the nature of money, the philosophy of money. Then I'm asking also, how much time have you spent on Bitcoin? Right? The answer is probably none. These people have spent no fucking time on it. And it's astounding how dogmatic people are in their views. I'm hedging myself. I'm saying, look, I've become more informed more recently. I don't know what the future is. I'll make predictions so that they're falsifiable, because that's a good way of doing science. Hey, let's look at the past performance. Let's look at what's happened in the past. Let's take the past data. Let's apply a theory on it based on money, based on what we know about sovereign state debt, based on what we know about money printing, based on what we know about the value of gold and hard assets, based on what we know about stock to flow. Let's take all that theoretical knowledge, bundle it up with 15 years of data now of the Bitcoin network, which could have, again, it could be at zero today. It's astoundingly gone from basically worth zero to 100,000 USD. Let's take all that information and let's make some fucking predictions. That I propose to you is how the scientific method works. Is anyone who is critiquing Bitcoin at this point doing that? I don't think they are. I don't think they fucking are. But I'm asking now, why don't we just make some predictions then? It's like everyone's so concerned with being fucking right, they're gonna miss what's actually happening in the world. How can this be? Everyone's so concerned with being so academically astute and showing how smart they are, again, without doing any of the research. They're missing this thing going from pennies to $100,000. It's been the biggest trade anyone could have ever made in the history of time ever, basically. I don't know, Alaska was pretty good, I guess. Buying Alaska from the Russians. I don't know, can I edit this? Let's just put buy. Buy. So let's just go up. I mean, there's another person here who wrote, like, this is very intriguing that you wrote this, and let me just see, I replied to some other person here. Let's go. I could have sworn I just had them open, but oh yeah. So let's go to Christian Poley. Can we go to his reply, or is he going to take me to his LinkedIn? Fuck, it took me to his LinkedIn. Okay. I would also point out that the Bitcoin network has no tangible uses. It can't be used for everyday payments. It's far too volatile. Securities, or at least backed by a currency that has a use. Yeah, the use is deflating. Other than to buy securities, Bitcoin feels like a tax avoidance scheme for the rich. It is for the rich, I'll tell you that, for the most part. I mean, it wasn't inherently built for them, but they're going to benefit the most from any advancements in financial technology. So I'm curious, why do you believe Bitcoin should be used for everyday purchases? At the time of creation, the throughput was limited to 7 transactions per second, which persists today, in order to increase security. The creator was likely aware of MasterCard and Visa handling thousands of transactions per second. In my estimation, it's akin to saying someone who is really well informed about cryptography, computer science, and global finance was also an idiot because he believed he could replace fiat currencies for daily purchases with a network that has a capacity of 7 transactions per second. Could it be that there's something missing in your understanding about Bitcoin? And so I asked ChatGPT about this to help you. So I'm just trolling people this one because it's like you could actually ask AI like, hey, like I'm thinking of saying like this stupid thing. I guess you don't know it's stupid because you haven't done it. You think that you're actually smart by saying this, right? I'm thinking that I'm going to critique Bitcoin because it can't be used for everyday payments, right? Is this a good? And then ChatGPT would tell you, well, actually, maybe the white paper, it's a peer to peer, but it didn't say it was 6 billion people are going to be buying coffee on a 7 transaction per second throughput network. That seems like actually a really dumb thing to say. I know I had one more here. But your statement didn't. Okay, I don't know. It's like it's too. This LinkedIn thing is just like it's just information everywhere. Anyways, I wonder if anyone replied. It would be interesting. No one's replied yet. Okay, so someone liked my comment, sure. Anyways, I just wanted to rant about that. Look, these are the same. This is the same argumentation that's been happening since Bitcoin was worth 10 cents. It's the same, and when it was worth $1,000 and it was in the news. What I keep seeing is there are people from all walks of life, from all levels of intelligence, with all levels of expertise, who are seemingly very confident in their ideas about crypto, and yet they've done no research on the philosophy of money. They've done no research on why Bitcoin might be useful. They've not including any of the data that's coming in. When Vladimir Putin of Russia says Bitcoin's inevitable, and the BRICS nations are looking at it as a possible way to getting around US sanctions with the dollar supremacy, the hegemony of the United States dollar. That's a fucking use case. I'm sorry, excuse me. It's a use. What are you telling me there's no use cases? You might not see it as a legitimate or viable use case. That's different than saying there's no use cases. Sorry, when authoritarian regimes who are displeased by the US being the dollar reserve currency of the world, having to do exchange in US dollars, but not having the sovereignty to control US dollars, not being able to affect how many US dollars are in circulation. They have to buy it and trade with it, but they don't have sovereignty over it. You know how fucking pissed you would be if you're a nation state and that's true? I have to the fundamental liquidity, the medium through which I deal with my large economy like China to settle international trades like oil from Australia. I have to do that in US dollars. I have to continually buy US dollars and stock up on them, which is fundamentally a play on the trust in the American economy. But I don't have the legislative and political ability to affect the printing of those US dollars. Are you crazy? You think these countries like that? Now, I'm not saying I'm supportive of any of these authoritarian regimes, but I'm asking you, like, has anyone thought about this? They're certainly thinking about it. Their statements, a recent one from Vladimir Putin last week, their statements where it shows that they're thinking about Bitcoin in this way. And why wouldn't they? Why the fuck would they not? But there's still no use case. I don't understand. It's just a public ledger and anyone can copy it. And it's like we're still dealing with infants here. But what shocks me is that they're so confident in their claims. I want to say it again. I want to hedge myself. I'm not sure if Bitcoin will be around tomorrow. A 51% attack could happen on the network. Now, if you ask most of these clowns what a 51% attack is, they wouldn't be able to answer you because that's how little knowledge little research they've done. Supposedly, this guy who talks about blockchain, I'd be interested. Again, if I asked him over here, he probably could search it up if he didn't know what it was and then say, oh, I know what a 51% attack is. But if I met him in person right now, would he be able to describe to me what a 51% attack is, even though he said he teaches a course on blockchains? I don't even know if he would. I don't even know. He should be, but who the fuck really knows? But the level that we're dealing with, the rhetoric here and the confidence that people have in the rhetoric without doing basically any fundamental research, it's very concerning. This last point I'm making, which is basically the point of the whole video though, is not about Bitcoin. It's not about Bitcoin. It's about how people entertain different thoughts and opposing ideas, conflicting ideas, how they bring to bear information that they received from the past, how they are critical of information that they receive. right? When I receive this from the news, oh, I've heard this from the news over and over again that it's going to die. I've read all these articles that's worth nothing, and it's gone from dollars to $100,000. So maybe there's something wrong here. Like, I think that would be the logical position that people would be in at this point. I've read all these articles over and over again, and even I'm reading ones today, and it's all basically the same rhetoric over and over again. It's just a speculative asset, and it's just monkey creatures exchanging value, and it's all goodwill and sentiment. Okay, so that's what they've been saying, and it's done the run of a lifetime, literally. It's become the highest appreciating asset the world's ever known. I'm just asking for epistemic modesty. Okay, so could it be the case that I might have misjudged the utility of this network? So we get it. I understand what the network is. It's just these computers using. It's just. I mean, it was decades in the making, bringing all these different parts of cryptography together into one thing to make Bitcoin. But let's just say, oh, it's just a blockchain. I watched a video on blockchain. I know what it is. It's these computers that hold a ledger, and they guess at a random number. Isn't it silly? They guess at a random number. Bill Maher, it's a guy in the Matrix trying to like. It's one guy trying to guess another number, and both of them live in the Matrix, right? I love that one. But is it just that? Is that what it is? Or maybe I'm wrong. Like, this is the epistemic modesty I'm asking for. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't actually looked into anything about Bitcoin or monetary theory. And maybe that's why I'm misunderstanding. Maybe I should, and maybe now that Bitcoin's at $100,000, maybe it would be worth my fucking time to look into some of those topics. Get a stronger opinion. If you still hate Bitcoin, that's great. But the $100,000 price point should be beckoning you. Because it's not just a $100,000 price point. We got to $100,000 because it's been institutionalized, because ETFs are created, because BlackRock's into it, because we have an incoming U.S. president now who says he's going to be pro-Bitcoin. It's not just $100,000 is a proxy for real world shit that's actually happening. So because we're at $100,000 now, bolstered by that real world shit, all that stuff is really happening. Factually, you could look it up. I think most people are aware. Wouldn't it beckon you? Wouldn't it call you to go, hey, my theory that I've had about Bitcoin for the past 8 years that I've read from the news, and I haven't really done much other research, maybe it's wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I should learn more about it. Maybe I should learn more about hard money. What is hard money? What is stock to flow? Why was gold valued? Why are people calling it digital gold? Why was gold valued? What is final settlement? Well, who cares about final settlement? Maybe I should ask those questions. We're not seeing people do this. Instead, they're saying the same thing that's been said a decade ago when Bitcoin was $10 and $100, when the Silk Road was the biggest use case of Bitcoin. And there's other people saying, oh, there is no use case. There is no use. Fuck, I think the analogy is still perfectly valid. If you look at DARPANet, or ARPANET, I think it's DARPANET, from like in 1969. What was it? Penn State in Southern California. The military hooked up 2 computers across universities, I think. Had them communicate with each other. The advent of the internet. If that's ground zero for the internet, 1969, or, I would allow you to even push out into the 70s, the early 70s or mid 70s. If that's the advent of the internet, how fucking long did it take for the internet to be something that the average person would give a damn about? How long did it take for computers to go from supercomputers to pocket-sized to phone-sized computers and all the spaces in between? For internet to be Ethernet and then Wi-Fi, for the physical infrastructure, how long did it take to develop around this stuff? How long did it take from websites to go from simple HTML forum posts, not very interesting, to I can plan my whole day's itinerary using this web app. Then I can order all the different items that I've got, and I can put in my MasterCard on this network. I can do everything. My whole life, I can stream videos. How long did that take? Because it wasn't 15. I'm telling you, it's not 15 years. 1969, 15 years later, people weren't fucking doing that. They weren't doing it in 84. And if you go to the mid 70s, then you say, well, actually, I'm going to make the start of the internet the mid 70s. So 1990 is when the internet was in full bloom. Most people didn't have a fucking computer at home. They didn't have the internet. They weren't paying 1990. Almost no one. People were still using internet and cable TV. That was the main way you got. I mean, radio and the internet TV and the cable TV. I'm just saying this whole thing hasn't been thought through very well. There's an absolute failure in critical thinking. I'm not saying Bitcoin is the future of money. I don't have to. I'm not saying Bitcoin will be around in 15 years. I don't have to. But I'm saying, given what I know, I can make predictions now fairly confidently. I can say it'll probably be around in 10 years, and it'll probably be worth a lot more in 10 years. And I have reasons, evidence, understanding of history, understanding of concepts of money, of trust, as well as 15 years of this experiment running. $2 trillion on this network at some points, unhacked. Open source code, unhacked. Miraculous bit of technology in that regard. There could be a 51% attack tomorrow. I don't have to argue that it's the greatest thing ever to push my point. My point is something's happening. Something has been happening. The data is coming in. Bigger and bigger actors in the world stage are actually starting to renege on what they currently, on what they said, renege on the skepticism that they have, and they're starting to come on board and understand that there might be some value here. And that the average person and people who believe that they're informed enough to go on LinkedIn and talk about it very matter-of-factly don't understand these things is quite, it's disheartening at the very least, and to some degree it's disturbing, you know. But you know, at the end of the day, I don't need to just Bitcoin's, it's not this, I don't feel like that I'm the one who's going to change people's mind about Bitcoin and save them from themselves. Bitcoin doesn't need that. It's going to keep growing. I was ignorant of why Bitcoin might be valuable, the possible reasons why Bitcoin was valuable up until about 2 years ago. And Bitcoin didn't need me for that time, and it won't need me in the future. It for the most part, it doesn't need any of us. Because fundamentally, the technology itself is sound enough to solve major issues, millennia-old issues about money. And, you know, I'm learning that from Lynn Alden's book, so I thank her very much for that book. In any case, that's me from the Satoshi chain. Yeah, it's very annoying actually seeing all this shit. But you know, hopefully there's opportunity here. I mean, if everyone understood the potential value of Bitcoin and why it's potentially very valuable, there wouldn't be any opportunities in these markets, and it wouldn't be volatile. We like the volatility here. We like the opportunity, and we like everyone's ignorance in this regard. So, and as long as you're learning about it more and more and you're putting in the hours, you are going to get returns on that from as far as I can see. I can't guarantee that, but if this thing keeps growing, for the reasons, I think it will, for the reasons that are fundamental to it, and there's no disaster, quantum computer undermines it, 51% attack, which could happen, definitely could happen. It's not risk-free. But if fundamental things don't happen like they haven't in 15 years, we have 15 years of data, this thing's running, and it's been smooth. It's been working, and it's been growing. If it keeps working like that, approximately, there's going to be a lot of money for a lot of people still. We're not halfway through, basically. We're still at the beginning phase of the adoption curve. If you look at that S cycle, there's still a lot of money to be made here. It's very fertile grounds. Is there more and more risk as we go forward? In some ways, maybe you'd say there is. In some ways, maybe you'd say they're not. Insofar as it's entering more and more, I think if it enters, let's put it this way, if it enters more and more, if it gets financialized more and more and becomes more legitimized from normal institutions, by countries, by nation states, let me put it different, if it becomes too big to fail like banks are, they're going to take all the risk out of it for you, because you're going to be sitting there in Bitcoin. And if something tremendous happens to the network, that it would actually affect the global economy, what do we know from the past, few decades? They're going to bail you out. I'm not saying put millions of dollars into Bitcoin. I'm saying if you put 5% of your net worth into Bitcoin. And if we get to a place where Bitcoin becomes big enough, and we're starting to see the beginnings of that, it's going to be too systemically risky for the network to crash. So there will be an intervention. I mean, this is what we've seen. Now, I know you might be saying, Adam, this is heretical because Bitcoin is decentralized, will be no nation state. But I'm saying if many of the world's nations are eventually plugged into Bitcoin, with substantial amounts of money. There will probably be insurance on various Bitcoin stores and various Bitcoin companies that are at play on Bitcoin and altcoins. And there might actually be kind of government bailouts if things do go south. I'm not saying this is a world that I would like to live in. I'm just saying, like, we've seen this happen when things become too interconnected. And we've never had a system where we can have smart contracts triggering anonymously with these different layer ones to move economic value at the speed of light, a million times per second. We haven't seen that yet in the world. If the financial world, real world assets Larry Fink is talking about right now, if they get on board and they start putting their stuff onto Web3 and the blockchain, the world will not be able to afford the failure of crypto at that point. It's all risk, but what I'm saying is, like, when you look at it, it's manageable risk, and you should be able to put in some amount because the potential upshot here is still massive. That's all I'll say about that. Anyways, that's this again, Satoshi Chain. I'm Adam. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.